background. I'm literally in the moving phase, so I haven't got my office set up just yet.
Well,
Mobile office.
your office is better than mine. I'm currently on the couch. I have a fake background to hide the fact that I'm on my couch right now. But uh, we are Sasquatchers. This is Andrew and JC here again. We have a cool guest that I'm looking forward to. We're going to talk about some Bigfoot stuff here. It's always fun to talk about Sasquatch on Sasquatchers, which is not something we do every single week. I'm going to go ahead and
Surprisingly.
introduce him here after the intro, which will be changing here shortly for our season 3 upgrades.
The truth is out there. Never stop looking. Never be sheep. Always disrupt. We are the ungovernable. We are the truth seekers. We are Sasquatchers.
And we are here with Todd. Am I saying it right? Neiss?
Correct.
Okay. I was confident in that until I started to read it up above, and now I started to question it. But Todd, you have a cool background, and I'll go ahead and I'll let you introduce yourself here to the audience, and we'll just jump right into questions because I'm pretty interested.
Well, first off, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on your show. By way of introduction, my name is Todd Neiss. What can I say? I'm a 20 plus year combat veteran with the United States Army. I bring that up only because it will play into how and when I got baptized, if you will, into the Bigfoot phenomena. I do hold a degree in multidisciplinary studies through Grantham University. I've lived in the Pacific Northwest for, I'll say, 99% of the time. But currently I'm speaking to you from the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas, where I just recently moved. So I do maintain a home in Oregon as well, but I'm kind of a transplant here, and been getting into the Bigfoot phenomena here in the local area, which has really become quite fascinating. Like I say, I am retired from the military, and it's been giving me a lot more time to get into research in the field, which is what I'm looking most forward to. By way of telling you how I got introduced to the Bigfoot field, it was quite by accident, that's for sure. Growing up in the Pacific Northwest, you really can't help but hear of the legend of Bigfoot, but I had always relegated it to something more along the lines of a good campfire story or urban legend or what have you. But on April 3rd, 1993, that all changed for me. And that came by way of an encounter during a military exercise, in fact, where we were doing demolition exercises in the Oregon Coast Range on some private timberland, us being the 1249th Combat Engineers. And we had 3 different rock quarries within this area that we were blasting at. We'd blasted the first 2, moved on to the third, which was a cratering charge of ammonium nitrate that we'd been soaking in diesel fuel, about 250 pounds worth, I believe. So we weren't talking firecrackers. We're talking some pretty big booms. So we'd set the fuses. Everything had gone according to procedure up until this point. We set the fuses, got in our vehicles, and obviously got our convoy engaged in getting away from where this bomb was about to go off. I was a passenger sitting behind the driver of a Humvee, and as such, I had the liberty to look around the countryside. It was a fairly decent day, so I had the window down, and as a hunter in that particular area, the Saddle Mountain unit, I just naturally was looking around on the way down to our staging area. I was looking around for any form of wildlife, deer, elk, what have you. And we rounded this corner where the second blast came into sight. And as it did, I noticed three very stark, dark figures standing there out in the open in this rock quarry. Again, this was the one that we had probably detonated about an hour earlier. And the first thought that came to my head was, what the heck are those people doing down there? Because we had total control and 2 layers of security to make sure that civilians didn't enter the area for obvious reasons. And I hardly got the thought out of my head about what were those people doing down there when I realized what I was looking at were certainly not human. And by that, I mean, imagine, if you will, these 3 dark figures standing against a light gray background of basalt rock is what the quarry was made up of. So the contrast was very stark. And in looking at these profiles, I realized that something wasn't right. The arms were way too long. The legs were too long, also in proportion to that of a human. And they were huge. They didn't have a stitch of clothes on them. The 3 of them were watching our convoy as we were descending, like I said, away from the impending blast that was coming. And this wasn't a 5-10 second viewing. It was literally about 25 seconds would be my best estimate. So a fairly long sighting, as it were. And it was also the activity, I should point out, that was happening with these 3 creatures. Well, the largest one in the middle, stood there just still as a statue. These 2, I hate to say shorter, but 7-footers that were to its left and right were engaged in this rocking back and forth, if you will, shifting their weight from side to side, and these long pendulous arms that extended down below their knees were swinging back and forth. And they did it the entire 25 seconds I watched them. And the whole thing just put me in a state of shock, to be honest with you. Again, at 25-second time frame, I lost sight of them because we had taken another corner. And when we got down to that staging area, my first instinct was to run back up in the direction we just came. I really wanted to see him again, but once I got as far as I dared, I did not regain that visual. But as I'm standing there on my tiptoes with my hand up to my foot, looking in the distance, I heard somebody call my name, and I looked over, and it was a sergeant that I had been working with that day, and he said, "What are you looking at?" And I dropped my hand to my side, and I said, "Nothing." And so he continued to come up to where I was at, and once he got right up to where I was standing, he looked at me and he said, I suppose, I don't suppose you saw what I saw back at that second blast site. Well, at that point, I was kind of blown away because I thought I was the only one that really had seen them. But at the same time, I didn't want to be made a fool of, so I said, I don't know, Jeff, what did you see? And he said, well, I saw three huge hair covered Bigfoot, I guess. And of course, at that, I said, yeah, I saw him too, Jeff. I did. And, it was nice to have that corroboration, although I really, it wasn't necessary because I could never unsee to this day what I saw that day. And those 25 seconds literally changed the course of my life. So here we are.
Yeah. So how do you like? So with that being involved with the military and then you know, with people thinking that maybe you were seeing things, how do you discuss that in a way that's like beneficial to everybody else in the conversation, right? Like it's not just I saw something that had long legs and arms out in the woods. Like what did you say to them?
Well, to begin with, I didn't say anything. I mean, even though myself and Jeff had seen these, and as it would come to be, we had two more soldiers come forward and also admit to seeing what we saw. So it's a total of four eyewitnesses doing very serious, sober, dangerous work. All saw the same thing. But even at that, I kind of got into that position that I assume about 9 out of 10 people who do have encounters get, and that's, what do I do with this information, and do I go public about it, and or do I find some authority that I can go to, the Fish and Wildlife Department of Natural Resources, the Forest Service. I mean, who? And,
Right.
and the bigger question is who's going to believe me? Because the fact remains, there's nothing I could do to prove it. So, but at the same time, it eats you alive. And so, for the longest time, I kept quiet about it. To be quite honest with you.
So before this all happened, did you have any opinions or belief about like the Bigfoot or maybe primates in the wood, or was this like kind of your first introduction? You were just thrown in like this may be a Bigfoot that I'm seeing now.
Yeah, well, I even as a kid, I was always very much interested in science in all its forms, from geology to meteorology to biology. Um, uh, Suffice to say, I was a loner, right? So no, but
Right.
I love to gobble up books on science, and it's just, but never in my life did I really consider anything outside that box that we're told is supposed to represent reality, and so I kind of stayed in that lane for the longest time. And to answer your question, no, I never did entertain any sort of thought of anything beyond that. But again, living in the Pacific Northwest, you hear about this legend, and it does pique a curiosity. But I never really read any books on the subject or watched TV shows regarding it, for that matter. But boy, did that change.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because I have a coworker in my actual day job who is from that area, and I believe he actually lived out by Willow Creek. And when he brought that up so casually, and I was like, dude, like I love Bigfoot. Like, how are you just now telling me this? And he's like, yeah, it really wasn't that big of a deal to us, living there. Like every once in a while we get like a tourist or something, but it's not, it's just kind of the culture. And most of the time you don't even think about it. So and then he moved out here and obviously never had an encounter or anything of that nature. Not that we don't have them here, because my area specifically is kind of a hotbed. At least I'm
Where's
told.
that?
The Laurel Highlands in Pennsylvania.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm like right at the tip of the Appalachian Mountains.
Oh yeah.
I guess by Somerset, Altoona, Johnstown, kind of central Pennsylvania. And there are some people that, you know, swear up and down that they can take you out to these hotbed areas, and we're hoping to go out and do some investigating of our own here in about a month, maybe a little bit longer than that. So up until this point, I've had no Bigfoot experience. It's just a fun pastime and something that I like to talk about. And but yeah, to that point, you know, the person that I know from that area it's just so casual, not even really a thing to him. And I guess just it's out there in the zeitgeist on that side of the country, but until you have that 25 seconds with a couple of them, that, you know, really puts things into perspective for you. So it's always interesting.
It does. And one of the things that struck me, you know, once I did lose sight of him, you can imagine I had about 100 questions swirling in my head. It's like how, why, where, you know. But one of the things that struck me was I had hunted that area, that Saddle Mountain unit, for both deer and elk. I lived in the area and had been out there many times, even just hiking and fishing, and never did I stumble upon anything that would have even caught my attention with regards to the existence of these animals. And that's kind of what bugged me after the fact, because now knowing they're there, it's not a matter of believing, or in my case, not even believing. Where were they when I was out there all these years hunting? And the answer that, you know, kind of answers itself is they were. You just weren't in tune. You weren't looking for it. Right. And so where I'm going is that after that event, that encounter, that sighting, going into the woods with a whole new mindset and a mind open to other possibilities, it was almost overwhelming how much evidence I had obviously been walking right past and never even considering anything more than, oh, that's an interesting shape in the ground with 5 kind of toe-looking things. Yeah. You know, I just makes me wonder how many times I stepped right past them or by them, or even stepped stepped into a possible Bigfoot track and just dismissed it out of hand. And then, like I say, when you go in with the knowledge that they do exist, then you know the evidence is out there.
Yeah.
I think one of like the biggest things with some of these military sightings of like Bigfoot or Sasquatch is that around the same time there are also UFO sightings. Right? Did you experience anything like that, like lights, UFO sightings? You know, anything like that? Or was it?
I was going to bring that up. I can kind of tell from your facial expressions. So you said that you were very like scientific growing up, and you read a lot of science books and stuff. So I wanted to actually kind of broach the giant Bigfoot in the room and see if you were coming from it like an anti-woo position, completely pro-science, because we talk to everybody, and
we get all kinds of stories.
And when you mentioned like the prints and stuff, that
as do I, and no, I'm glad you brought that up, because there seems to be a real uh, two different camps that seem to like never want to come together, and that's those that think along just this is a natural biological species. It's not a single individual legendary beast that's lived for hundreds, if not thousands of years and shows up at, you know, all across the U.S. and
Right.
Canada and wherever, you know, it's just a species, and look at the possibilities that such a thing can exist, and try to fit it into uh, the just the biology of life. And then you've got those like, you know, you mentioned the woo, uh, those that are leaning more towards the paranormal or supernatural. And like I say, there seems to be that division between the two camps. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and about 3 years ago, I kind of had a bit of an epiphany, more to the point I kind of had my butt handed to me. And it had to do with the paranormal. But I had, you know, I've got friends in both camps, and you know, if it was one or two people saying this happened, that happened, eyes are glowing red, or in the middle of the night, and or they can appear and disappear at will. You know, if it's just a couple of people, I'd say, yeah, well, that's cool, but it's anecdotal, and it's just, you know, very, very subjective. And then, but when you have 50 to 100 people in your circle that claim similar things, well, there's a little truth in everything, right? So,
Sure.
I, without trying to be patronizing, I try to be understanding, but my go-to has always been, okay, if you say these creatures or any creature has any particular powers, if you will, or abilities, traits that are out of the norm or paranormal, then show me one other animal, one other species out there that we can compare it to and say, oh, okay, I
Women.
see now that. Okay, so this attribute, we have an example in known species, but then we can talk. But beyond that, it was like you're pulling this, you know, out of your butt. You have no evidence of it, which I get, but I mean, if you can't make some comparison to any other species with such capabilities, then I really have had a hard time with that. And in this one particular case, I had been keeping in touch with some native friends from the Omaha reservation in eastern Nebraska, and I mean right on the eastern border, on the border with Iowa, so the Missouri River just splitting them. Uh, because and just right off the bat, if you had asked me to name the top 5 states in the United States Bigfoot doesn't exist, I think Nebraska would be right up there. I'm thinking
No
cornfields,
Bigfoot's in Nebraska.
prairie. Yeah, it's like where they hide, right? In the
Bigfoot
corn?
doesn't like corn. He's done.
That's right. They're hiding in the corn.
No,
So
he's too
no,
he's
it's-
too big for that.
right. So,
Nebraskans
but
don't
no,
like
what I'd come to find out when I went there in person is that along that Missouri River, and within the reservation, it's a very heavily wooded forest and rolling hills, and you know, mostly hardwoods, oaks and maples and whatnot. But I had been communicating with these folks online for probably 2.5 years, and they kept showing me videos and telling me they've been having these encounters. And in this particular case, their encounters involved, in many cases, I should say, this eye shine effect. I'm sure you've heard of that, correct?
I'm actually not sure.
Well,
Are we
they, some
talking
people,
about like the red light?
yeah, some people, well, not a single light, but like a set of eyes. And for the longest time, I had these guys showing me videos, and they're like, "See those lights? That's them." And I'm like, I got to be able to explain this scientifically, or I just can't sign off on it. Well, one day at their invitation, I went ahead and flew out to the reservation, and they took me out in the field, and we'd go out from like midnight till 2, sometimes 3 in the morning. And again, I had put this whole glowing eye thing in the category of supernatural, paranormal, woo, whatever you want to call it. In other words, I wasn't buying it. And well, we got out in this very desolate, uh, extremely rural area. There was no other people around, no other vehicles to be seen, no lights, nothing. It's just pitch black. I mean, you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. And we carefully walked out into this particular point, and my friend called out in his native language. Into the darkness, he yells, "Aho, Kage," which in Omaha means hello, friends.
Mhm.
And which I would come to learn later. But anyway, I just hear him doing his thing, and he would do it maybe 3 times, and within like 30 seconds, all of a sudden, from out of the darkness are these lights, glowing lights, a pair, what look like eyes. And I'm like, is that what I think it is? And he's like, yeah, that's them. And then maybe 10, 15 seconds later, another set off to the right. And I'm not just talking lights. Like, my first go-to is, okay, I'm being punked. This is a hoax. How can this be a hoax? But as I'm watching this, I'm watching these sets of eyes moving, sometimes left, right, sometimes backing off, sometimes coming towards us. I'm watching them turn left and right. I'm watching them move independent of each other. I'm thinking that, my thought is, okay, he's got this little remote control, and there's these LED lights out there, and so anyway, we saw it at any given time up to 3 individuals, and you can actually see them blink. And so I went to bed that night. I don't know how much sleep I actually got, but I went to bed that night. We got up, well, I should say that morning. Got up that afternoon, went back. We did it all over again. And we did this 5 nights in a row in 2 different locations with completely independent types of results, but results just the same. And it wasn't just these what appeared to be glowing eyes in the dark, but it was also some vocalizations that were going on in the background that were just out of this world, unearthly, definitely nothing that you could associate with any known animal. And yeah, so that's what happened to me about 3 years ago. And so I knew when I got back home, I've got to, I got to toe the line. I got to bring it to my standards. So I've got to find a way to find something in common animal kingdom that will account for this. And so I got home and I set about to do that. And I think I've come up with some pretty good plausible answers based on known species out there. But then that for me opened the door to, hey, is there a way that I can stand on this third rail between the biological people, the scientific minded people, the citizen scientists like myself, and the people that are into the supernatural? Is there a way I can bridge the two? Is there some way we can meet in the middle? And so, and that whole Einstein thing is what started it for me. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna pick the lowest hanging fruit in the woo category. I'm going for the whole, you know, this phenomena where people say that they appear and disappear randomly and in front of you, and you know, they're teleporting or they're going through portholes. I'm like,
Right.
okay, all right, I got to go for the next one. And here's the thing: is this, like I say, there's always a bit of truth in everything, and again, not being anecdotal, but having numerous people claiming to have experienced the same thing. And this is where you gotta kind of base everything. Is there's a difference between experience and reality. And a lot of people say, uh, perception is reality, and it may be your reality, but the key is the perception, and this is where a lot of people would take umber with the paranormal and supernatural people. My thing is, okay, I believe that you've had an experience, that something happened, you witnessed something, and and this is your perception. Now, is there a way that we can figure out a scientific way where to explain what happened? And I don't disagree with you having this experience. It's your interpretation of it. Okay. Can we perhaps reinterpret what you saw, assuming what you saw is your perception, but change the interpretation into a more, digestible format? And so that's kind of where I've been lately, is standing on that third rail and trying to bridge those gaps, because I just can't write those people off. Um, like I say, I've got a lot of friends that run in those circles. But what I've really engaged in lately is trying to conduct some experiments, if you will, because that second low hanging fruit is a tough one. How do you explain how something appears or seems, perception again, seems to appear or disappear while you're watching it? And so I'm working on that. There's an experiment I'm doing, again, based on a known animal that has certain amazing capabilities. In this particular case, I'm referring to a polar bear. Now,
Okay, I wasn't expecting that.
if I ask you, well, it's a matter of going way down that rabbit hole and coming up with a polar bear. But so no, if I ask you what color a polar bear is, most people are going to say white. Well, the truth of the matter is there is not a single white hair on a polar bear.
No, they're like a gray. They're like a dark gray color, right?
Well, they're tannish. They can be gray, but they appear white for a very specific reason. They have a second coat, if you will. Dogs have these, certain breeds of dogs have these. They're called guard hairs, and these guard hairs extend slightly beyond the base coat of the animal. And in the case of the polar bear, these guard hairs are absolutely clear. You could see right through them. The hairs are transparent, almost like fishing line or fiber optic line was probably a better example. So what they do is they pull in and reflect, if you will, or they give off the ambient light and color that surrounds the bear. And in this case, in most cases, they're found in snow or ice, and so it gives them the ultimate camouflage. So I've actually purchased a full height of a North American black bear and about 1,000 feet of fiber optic wire. And I'm going to be doing an experiment where dividing that full bear rug, if you will, in half, or from the inside, drawing a line, and time consuming to be sure, but my plan is to insert these fiber optic hairs or wire fiber just beyond, maybe a half inch beyond the actual black bear pelt, and then again just on half of it, and then taking it out into different settings under specific lighting conditions, and just seeing if half of that pelt doesn't seem to blend in with the background or its surroundings. And if that's the case, again, having that example in nature, perhaps we can explain. And again, it's an experiment. I have yet to see it work out. I'm hoping I'll get that shipped here pretty soon because, like I say, we just moved out here to Arkansas and we still haven't got all of our furnishings. If you looked around me right now, there's furniture and boxes and all kinds of things yet to be unpacked. But anyway, but that's the experiment I'm working on now, and that's going to hopefully render some success in showing how something with hair the color of perhaps a black bear, like what I observed, can seem to disappear, or if not really disappear physically, but blend into the background.
Yeah, that cloaking.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you call it cloaking. I mean, it is kind of like what you see in the movie The Predator. I mean, if you see the scenes where it's not moving, it's almost impossible to see, and you can barely make it out when it is moving. But so that's kind of what I've been up to lately, just trying to come up with some outside of the box experiments some other people have yet to do, and see if we can help bridge that gap.
That is a good one. I didn't know that about the polar bear, so you shocked me there. The one thing that I always correlate, and I mean, when you're looking at what is a bipedal primate, it's not the best comparison, but the way that octopus are able to cloak, and they're how just within seconds their color changes, or they appear to suddenly be a piece of coral, or under rock or something under the water.
Yeah, it's amazing, and we see that with squid, we see it with cuttlefish, we see it even terrestrially with say chameleons. So there is that cloaking capability. But where I get hung up is this: I need an example within the mammal family,
Right.
And I think we've got that with the polar bear. So
Yeah. Are you putting that on a YouTube channel or website or anything? Because I'm actually very interested to see the results of this once you finally get to work on it.
well, I do have a website which is currently being, I'd say it's under construction. It's actually under destruction. I'm really going to start from scratch because of a lot of things that's happened. But I am in the process of writing a book, my first book, Johnny Come Lately. But I figured after 30 years, it's time for me to summarize at least what I've learned over the years, and I have to admit it has evolved. My thought processes and all this has evolved over time, and I even, as a caveat in the book, state what I'm telling you in this book today may not be what I'm saying tomorrow, because the jury's still out, and so I try to remain flexible in that regard. But yeah, so before this book is published, and I'm shooting for late April or early May. Then hopefully those results will be there. But one way or the other, they will be made public.
That's very cool. Again, I had no idea about that information about the polar bear, so I might actually start doing a little bit of research and start using
And
that
Google that.
as an argument when I start having them. But we unfortunately we run about an hour, and we're already hitting that 40-minute mark, and there's some things that I wanted to get to based
Let's
off
change gears.
of your notes, just so that I can properly promote you and the stuff that you do. So I was curious if you would get into the American Primate Conservancy that you founded in 2015, maybe talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So after doing research for quite some time, I decided to really entertain, why me, to begin with. I could have been looking the other direction. It could have been a minute or two either way and would have missed everything. And so I kind of, on a personal level, tried to find a meaning, a purpose, if you will, for what I experienced and what has come to really impact my entire life, the whole direct course of my life. And so on a personal level, what I experienced was so fantastic and life-changing that I want to make sure that future generations, my kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, will have at least the same odds, albeit very rare, to have the same chance to see and experience what I did. And in that vein, the question becomes, what could prevent that from happening? And I can't help but think about this species in a more personal way. For me to know they exist and to know how rare they really are, odds of seeing them, numerically, it's a challenge. And so I started contemplating the whole concept of preservation. We don't know what the health of this species is. I mean, if you can't tell me how many there are today, certainly you're not going to be able to tell me how many there were 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago, or how many there might be in 100 years from today. And a lot of people would say, leave them alone, they're doing great, but that's just a romantic notion. And unless you have the same sort of criteria we use for any other animal, I don't care if it's a mammal or an insect or a reptile, we've got data, and we don't have that data. And until we do, it's a guessing game. So in October of 2015, I founded the American Primate Conservancy. It's a nonprofit organization based on science and education, but our mission statement is the discovery, research, knowledge, data, recognition, and protection of the species. And if you think about it, it has to happen in that order. The discovery, which is happening to this very day and has been happening for some time, they're being seen on a lot more routine basis than many people would know. And the research and the data that we collect needs to go toward that concept of preservation, but standing in the middle of that is that recognition piece. And that is to say, the scientific community having come to the conclusion that these things are in fact a species in and of themselves, and to have them named as such in a binomial fashion, and only then are we really going to be able to jump to that protection or preservation mode. So that's what the Conservancy is all about. That is my mission. That is my goal personally, is to establish laws, to make sure that it's no longer open season, because frankly right now it is. There's nothing out there that will hold anybody accountable should they harm or injure or kill one of these beings. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's right. And so there have been attempts in the past to go to, say, the Fish and Wildlife, or the Canadian version of that. In the United States, it falls under the jurisdiction of the Department of brain part, environment. It'll come to me. But it always seems to fall on its face when brought to authorities, and it's an easy out for them to just brush you off. So I've kind of, or I should say, the Conservancy has tried to pursue this protection, maybe jumping the shark a little bit in terms of doing an end around the recognition piece, but I decided let's kind of go the back door, and that's working with Native American tribes, because let's see, us Europeans have been here about 300 years and think we know everything, and meanwhile we have indigenous people that have lived here for over 20,000 years and have had to live symbiotically with this species, and it's become part of their culture. It's become it's once you do break that ice with Native Americans and get them to talk with you, it's you might as well be talking about deer or elk or bears, because it's just interwoven as a natural part of their culture and their upbringing. So what I've been trying to do in working with now 5 different tribes is to get, I basically put together a draft resolution that's kind of plug and play, if you will. Insert the name of your tribe or your nation, if you will, because they are considered independent nations, and then whatever you call them. In the case of the Omaha, they know them as Satonga. So in their case, I put the Omaha Nation Satonga Protection Act, and like I say, you can change it to Navajo and call it Siatko, or change it to Nez Perce and call it Bakwas, what have you. They all have different names to describe the same species that they've come to know, and what we've come to know as Bigfoot. But they have the autonomy on their own land, on their reservations, their nations within our nation, and there's hundreds of them. And I think it's an easier sell to get the Native Americans to enact regulations with regards to the treatment of this species, because it bolsters their culture, as well as it bolsters their beliefs. It bolsters what they've been saying all along, and they do revere this species as another tribe. To be honest with you, they don't consider them an animal like they do the wolf or the bear, the owl, raven, what have you. They consider them an ancient tribe, one that was there before them. In fact, they call them the old ones, or the uh, the first ones. So my tact, as I'm sure you can pick up on, is to get these reservations who can apply these laws, at least within their own tribal lands, to sign on to these measures, these laws, customizing them to their own particular tribes. But once that gets rolling, and I think it'll catch on. It's going to make it a lot easier to go to the Department of the Interior, which is what I was trying to say earlier. The Department of the Interior is the umbrella to Fish and Wildlife and the Forest Service and so many other different things. But now when somebody goes to the Department of Interior, instead of saying, hey, I really think these things exist and I think they need to be protected and you need to do something, now you can go with a whole stack of
all the way.
tribal
Yeah.
laws and regulations and say, don't look now, but you're surrounded by all these tribes all across the country, and not just the U.S. but Canada, that are signing on to this. Now it's going to make them sit up and pay attention, and in a way, it kind of takes that burden off of them, that ridicule factor that so many of us individuals have to face. It makes it a little bit easier sell, and especially now in light of what we've seen in just the last year with the whole UAP phenomena, formerly known as UFOs. Now we got the government coming forward with the Department of UAP investigation and what have you.
There's always departments. You just keep digging through, and there'll always be a department, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
But
Yeah.
So
I don't mean to
what
cut you short here, Todd, but behind you have like a watercolor painting of a Sasquatch on your right side. Is that indicative of what you've seen, or is that just like an artwork piece that you like?
Actually, I ordered these a while back, and they just actually arrived today, and I'm like, I don't have my office set up. What am I going to do? And I'm like, oh, I'll throw that poster up there. But I do love it. It's a great piece.
It's great. It is good.
yeah.
And I don't think it's too far off from what these things actually look like. But my mea culpa, I was not close enough to get that sort of detail, facial detail, if you will. But it's I don't think it's too far off from what we're dealing with. I honestly, in my opinion, we're dealing with a relic hominid that it just is a survivor, where Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon and some of the other early human species went extinct. This particular branch of hominid thrives and survives to this day.
Yeah. We talked to Jeffrey Meldrum, and he kind of put us on that path. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and I wanted to plug your upcoming
That
event.
hour goes by so fast.
I keep it at an hour, though, so that, if you like us, then you can come back, and then we'll talk for another hour.
That's where editing comes in, right?
Yeah,
right.
But I do want to plug his events here, and he's going to be a speaker at Beachfoot in June, and that's at River's Edge Campground in Oregon, and then also a speaker at Sasquatch Summer Festival in June at Oak Ridge, Oregon. I want to thank you for your time. I appreciated this conversation, and just scrolling through all of the notes here, we have so much more to uncover in that second hour.
We'll need another
call. Well, let's do it again.
Sure.
Okay,
absolutely.
Awesome. We'll
more than happy.
We'll include everything in show notes, and everything that we upload. We'll have links and stuff. So if you think of anything else that you'd like to add, be sure to send it to us. And we will go ahead and hit the outro and wish Todd a good night.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Thank
you, Todd, so much. Thanks for squatching. Squatch you later.
Bye.